Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Kevin Zwicker from Fast Count, and this is your August 27th AEW Dynamite post show. We are coming off of Forbidden Door, where we saw MJF lose to Hangman Adam Page. We saw the lights out steel cage match, which was pretty much a farewell to Will Ospreay, especially with the angle that they did at the end, where it looked as if that was going to be the moment that we send him off. Have a built-in feud for him when he comes back, which we don't know when that's going to be, whether it's a year from now, 18 months from now, shit, maybe even 2 years. You never know when it comes to these necks, but hopefully it's sooner rather than later. But I don't want it to be a situation where he rushes to come back. I want him to be as healed as he possibly can be once he makes his return. But I'm just going to be completely honest with you guys. There were spots in this show that were a little bit dull to me, and that's been kind of a pattern. If you've been paying attention to these shows that AEW has been doing post big pay-per-views, I thought the main event was great. Seeing Darby Allin do all these, daredevil stunts, it's never gets old to me. I have said it multiple times, when I have conversations about him. I call him the skinny McFoley, because he is somebody who I think, enjoys pain. He's not somebody who runs from it. He's somebody who runs towards it. And it's good to see him being in a position where he's main eventing the show. Good for Claudio as well, who is somebody who doesn't main event the show very often when it comes to singles matches. And for him to get that opportunity is nice for him as well. Sets up more furthering along this story that they're telling with Darby Allin and Jon Moxley, where he is ducking these singles matches that he is being challenged to from Darby Allin. But before we really get into the show, I want to take a second to thank you all. We reached 3,000 subs earlier today, which has been a goal for the last several months to do. And I want to just say that with all these different options that we have when it comes to wrestling content, the fact that over 3,000 of you decided to hit that subscribe button and choose to tune in and watch is not something that I take for granted. It's something that I very much appreciate, and it's something that I thank you all. And when the time is right and the channel gets to levels that I hope that it's able to get to, will be repaid somehow, some way, with some cool things that are coming down the pipeline, guys. But again, thank you all. Please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't. We hit 3,000, but it's time for us to go and hopefully march towards 4,000. That backstage MJF promo was absolute fire. You know what I like about what they're doing with MJF right now? I'm coming off of that big-time loss to Hangman at Forbidden Door, right? Where, he threw everything that he possibly could throw at Hangman. I like the fact that they're now telling the story where he's a guy who has his back against the wall, and he does have the opportunity to use the contract and get another shot, but he's a guy who right now is on his last option with that contract, and he's insecure about if he fails again, he is, basically SOL, shit out of luck, right? I thought that was great. I thought the main event was great. I know that a lot of people, kind of aren't so keen on Adam Copeland and the Christian storyline in AEW. I kind of feel as if Cope has kind of taken the place of Chris Jericho, of the old guy taking up TV time from the young guys. But if we're going to get a reunion between him and Christian, I think that that's the best case scenario. And I thought that the opening segment that we had earlier in the night was entertaining for the most part. I think that the match that they're going to have at All Out is going to be entertaining. But I want to know, this is something that I'm kind of curious about, because that's going to be the same night as WrestlePalooza. And if they're going on at the same time, it's going to be kind of hard to go and do a post-show involving both. So I'm not sure what people would rather see. Would they rather see, after that night, would they rather see a WrestlePalooza post-show, or would they rather see a all-out post-show? I probably should just run it up the poll, right? Just do a run it up the poll and ask what would people rather see, the WrestlePalooza post-show or a all-out post-show, so I can know which one that I need to talk about that people are going to be interested in more. I think that night's going to be super interesting because if we're going to get Brock Lesnar versus John Cena, I think that's going to be the match that everybody is coming out of that night talking about. That's going to be the match that's going to have the most, buzz, right? But just not even seeing the card with All Out is going to have. I'm just assuming that wrestling wise, that's going to be the better card. But going out of that night, I think that people are going to be talking more so about WrestlePalooza. When you talk about stacking the card, I don't know how they're going to be able to do that, from the AEW side right now, especially with no Swerve and Will Ospreay. I think that the only thing that they could possibly do, big match wise, was if we get Hangman versus Kenny Omega, which was possibly teased tonight. When we saw that confrontation with Hangman and the Don Callis family, and we saw Jet Speed and Kenny Omega make the save. We saw them come face to face at the end, teasing, is this a situation where we're going to get them, reuniting as, allies? You guys remember they were tag team champions, back, in the, original days of AEW in the start. They are a part of probably, arguably for a lot of people, the best tag team match in AEW history against the Young Bucks at Revolution. Or we can see them running it back as opponents. You guys remember their match at Full Gear a couple years ago. This time it'd be a little bit different. They'd be both be coming in as baby faces and not Kenny Omega as a heel aligned with Don Callis. That could be a direction that they could go. But it's going to be hard for them to catch the buzz of that night. I think it's going to be tough for them, especially if we're getting Cena versus Brock Lesnar, because like it or not, people are going to be talking about Brock Lesnar. And obviously with John Cena being in his, last couple of days, last couple appearances of his farewell tour, every single appearance that he makes is a big deal as well. I don't think that match is going to be any good, to be honest, but people are going to be talking about it. Guys, please hit the like button and subscribe. But we are at the 2300 Arena, the original ECW arena. I thought that the venue had a very nice vibe. This isn't the first wrestling show that has taken place there that isn't a ECW show. But you saw a couple weeks ago, WWE ran the Wells Fargo Arena. They paid a tribute to ECW with ending their show with Jey Uso and Braun Breaker in a Extreme Rules match. And tonight we had Darby Allin and Claudio Castagnoli pay their tribute in a Falls Count Anywhere match in the main event, right? But we started off with FTR. FTR, you guys remember, if you saw Forbidden Door, they were a part of that triple threat match for the AEW tag team titles, where we saw Brodito pick up the win and pick up the tag titles. Brodito, a lot of times when we have these, kind of Frankenstein tag teams, it's very hit or miss. But I feel like Brodito has, just from the start, has just been locked in and doing some really good work. Dax Harwood has some mic issues in the beginning. AEW, a lot of times for some reason they have production problems, whether it's mic issues or other audio problems or times where the screen goes in or out. Every once in a while they just shit kind of happens with them, right? And he says, at Forbidden Door there was a miscarriage of justice. People wanted to see the 11-time tag team champions be crowned, and we were kind of robbed of that moment. He said there was an illegal pin, and he says, I want to talk about the man who is responsible for that. We have referee Paul Turner already in the ring. And he asked Paul Turner, he says, Paul, are you married? Do you have any kids? And he said, yes, I do. They're here in the arena. And he says, Paul, how would you feel if you would have to go, to your wife, to your child, and explain to them that, you're an idiot, a moron, things like that, that you screwed up, that you cost somebody something. He's like, because that's basically, what I had to do to my family. And he asked Paul Turner to, reverse his decision. And Paul tells him, my decision is final. You have Stokely get in his face. And he tells him that, all you care about is the internet fans. And you need to hop off their dicks. And you see them kind of go back and forth, a little bit of a shuffle. They push Paul Turner. Paul Turner stands up for himself, and it looks like Paul Turner's about to get a case of the beats. Then we hear Metalingus. Cope comes out. He keeps looking behind him, looking for where Christian is at. We see no Christian. Then we get, back to the ring, and we see Christian sneak behind them and hit Stokely Hathaway with a kill switch. I always want to call it the Unprettier because I feel like that's a better name. And then we see them brawling, and then we see a challenge be set for All Out, FTR versus ENC. And then you see Christian, talk about Dax. He says, I know that you have a father, Cash. I know you have one as well. And you see Cope, trying to stop it because he is the face in this, tag team between these two guys. And the crowd, kind of boos Cope. And he says, you guys are a bunch of sickos. And he allows Christian to continue. And he says, your father is dead. I like this dynamic. It's not very often that we see tag teams, where you have a face and a heel, teaming up, right? I remember back in WCW, we had Lex Luger and Sting have a similar dynamic. But I like the fact that they have it, put it into where they are, making Cope a heel to, go and align with Christian, or turn Christian back to a baby face to align with Cope. I like what they're doing. They're keeping these guys the exact same, and I'm enjoying it, right? Next, we get into Mox versus Daniel Garcia. Daniel Garcia, who is coming off of being in Nigel McGuinness's corner for his match against Zack Sabre Jr. at Forbidden Door. Daniel Garcia is somebody who has been kind of a big afterthought, if you think about it. I remember several months back when it was a discussion of, is he going to go to WWE? Is he going to go to AEW? People going back and forth, all these different rumors each week. He's saying, he's going to go to NXT. He's re-signing with AEW. He, eventually re-signs with AEW. And with the void of Ospreay and Swerve that they're going to leave behind, this is an opportunity for guys like Daniel Garcia to really step up and show themselves what they're able to do to the crowd. Guys like Hook, who we saw return later on in the night, the women as well. We got 2 back-to-back women segments, which is extremely rare on episodes of Dynamite. So this is an opportunity for a lot of people to be able to, step up with Ospreay and Swerve gone. And this is a really interesting back-and-forth match. Going into it, I'm pretty sure you guys knew that Mox was going to pick up the W, but Garcia was able to do his thing. Garcia, I don't think that anybody really questions his wrestling ability. I think it's pretty common knowledge that the guy can go. But it's all about, the charisma and his promo ability. It's just something that, isn't 100%, connecting with everybody. And we need a little bit more. I know that they tried to do that with him joining, the Jericho Appreciation Society. But looking back at it, it probably would have made a lot more sense if he joined the Blackpool Combat Club at the time. But I know that pairing him up with Jericho, that was AEW's attempt to try to give this guy an opportunity to show off that he's able to do things outside of just being a good wrestler. But it just hasn't 100% clicked with Garcia. But no dancing for Danny. Yeah, I enjoyed the dance. The dance is entertaining. The dance makes me laugh. But you see Danny, he was able to go in with Mox. He was able to, go toe-to-toe with him. But at the end, Mox picked up the win with an inside cradle. You had Wheeler Yuta pick up the mic after that. And he says, Mox, doesn't even want to waste his breath on the challenge that Darby Allin issued earlier before this match even took place. We had this, backstage vignette of Darby Allin. You guys, if you saw Forbidden Door, you saw Mox almost, detach the man's ear from his head. It was pretty graphic. And you see Darby Allin, painting with his blood from his ear. And he says, after Mount Everest, people were saying that I was going to die on Mount Everest. And after that, I've kind of realized that basically, I'm a tough SOB, right? It's hard to take me out of the game. And he says, Mox, you took everything from me, and I'm coming back to take it. Challenges into All Out. Yuta answered it right here for Mox, saying, no, I'm not even going to waste my breath on it. Then we get back from a commercial break, and Wheeler, he takes the mic again. He goes on to talk about how, he lives in Philadelphia. He's from Philadelphia. He used to be a part of the ring crew that would put, the rings together in that venue, the 23 Arena. He broke bones in that arena and all these different things, and he says that, he's not bothered that you guys do, all these chants that he gets, from him, these negative chants that go towards Wheeler, all these several weeks. He says, I'm a death rider, He says, look what all these cheers have gotten guys like, Ospreay and Chuck Taylor and, who else? Bryan Danielson, all these guys. He says he is the Dragon Slayer. And then we get a pitch black arena. We get the Hook sign, and we get the return of Hook. Hook. All right. And Hook comes. He puts Wheeler Yuta in the red room. And that's how we end it. It's good to see Taz's son make an appearance in the 2300 arena. It probably was the perfect place for him to make his return. I think so. They don't have anyone that can fill the shoes of those two. Orange Cassidy is our only hope. You keep saying that, man. Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy is reportedly cleared and ready to go. I'm sure that right now they're just figuring out, creative for the guy, but he is supposedly locked and loaded and ready to make his return. After that, we get a very intense MJF, backstage interview after his loss to Hangman Page at Forbidden Door. Throughout that whole match, you guys remember Hangman Page was getting, you deserve a chance and all these different things. And MJF looks back at it and he says, I did everything that I possibly could. And Hangman did the exact same things that I was doing, these underhanded tricks. Yet heroes cheered for it, and I wasn't. And then he brings up Mark Briscoe and said that he should have burned him alive when he had the opportunity. And then he says that, he brings up this rule change now that we have for the contract. Now, if you guys don't know, you're not able to really use it Money in the Bank style anymore. You have to at least announce your intentions to use your contract a week in advance, which I like. I think that the Money in the Bank briefcase thing has kind of become a crutch at this point. I feel like it's one of those. I feel like it's an escape route to get an instant pop, in any situation that you're put in. It's kind of like a do-over for if you're booking a shitty angle and, you just say, hey, doesn't matter if this angle is shitty, we're just going to do a cash in and people are going to go crazy for it. They kind of just, we're going to hope that people forget the shitty creative that they had going into it. Mox is big, man. Where's a fireproof? Yeah. Next, we get into Megan Bayne and Penelope versus Harley Cameron and Statlander. Like I said earlier, with the void of Swerve and Ospreay, this is an opportunity for the ladies as well. A lot of times, when we see the women's segments on Dynamite, it's mainly focused on two individuals, Toni Storm and Mercedes Moné, which makes sense, the two biggest stars in the division, but you kind of want to be able to showcase what the other ladies do. Harley Cameron, very talented individual. I think that we were able to see that going into that build that she had with Mercedes Moné, with the puppet and all these things and all the singing. She's somebody who has shown more than one occasion that she's a very entertaining individual. I think that, Swerve and Ospreay missing significant time is a blessing in disguise for somebody like that, right? But Megan Bayne, Chris Statlander, the two more powerful women in the AEW women's division, were able to showcase that throughout this match. Harley Cameron, she's improved steadily but slowly in the ring. I think that she is just a little bit more seasoning away from really being in that conversation of somebody who could really possibly be a contender for somebody like Toni Storm. Think about the program that they would have, right? Toni Storm and Harley Cameron. I think about the entertaining segments that those women would be able to do with a long extended, let's say 8-week build towards a title match. That's something that I could see myself really enjoying. That's something that I could see producing some really good television. And that's something that I would look forward to seeing sooner rather than later. But Stat, she has been debuting this new submission hold that she's been using for the last couple of weeks. It's kind of like an armbar headlock hybrid. She was able to do that on Penelope Ford for the win. After that, Megan Bayne, sore loser. She sat there and she was taking out Harley Cameron and all the in Chris Statlander as well. But we saw Willow Nightingale come and attempt to make the save. Nightingale, Statlander, frenemies. We saw Harley Cameron lift both of their hands up. So we saw this segment end with the baby faces looking as if they were standing strong. I missed that puppet. It was over. Something that's interesting, and that you got to kind of pay attention between the two companies, right? WWE, they are quick if they see a catchphrase or anything of the sort, if they even think it has 5% chance of selling a T-shirt, they put it on a shirt or they make a doll of it. You saw it at the Triple Mania show. Finn Balor, he had a puppet that they used to eat fucking Jessica, Mr. Iguana's puppet. And as soon as that segment was over on WWEshop.com, you were able to purchase that puppet. It was for $100, but you were able to do it. And you got AEW who had this puppet that was over as well, and never once did they put it on their website to sell, which I'm sure that they could have sold a bunch. They could have sold a bunch. They're very quick to drag their feet on hologram masks as well, which I thought could have sold some as well. They need some. They need a new. They need somebody in the new merchandise department, because that motherfucker is slow to capitalize on things, or Tony just doesn't want to approve it. But next, we get into a segment with Mercedes Moné, the GOAT, the greatest female wrestler to ever place on the boots. As you guys can tell from the back, big fan of her work. But this is a celebration. She won the four-way, the interpromotional four-way at Forbidden Door. Bozilla, if you watch that match, was the MVP of that match. Very good showing from her. But Mercedes was the one who picked up the W. She has all her belts laid out on the table. She has balloons in the corner. We have Renee in the ring. She's interviewing Mercedes. She's recapping Mercedes' big week, winning at the Rev Pro show, winning at Forbidden Door, winning the tag team match heading into Forbidden Door. But she brings up Alex Windsor, and she brings up during that tag team match that Alex Windsor tapped her out. But the referee didn't see it, and you see Mercedes Moné correct her. So that wasn't, she wasn't the legal person in the match. That was just swatting a bug. I didn't tap out to anybody. And she brings up that Ultimo Dragon is somebody who had 10 titles at once. And she says, I am going for that record, and I am going to crush it. As you guys, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that very famous picture of Ultimo Dragon with 10 beautiful ladies holding his titles. That is one of those pictures that I'm going to have to put in the office, because I think it's that badass. But she talks about Alex Windsor. She says, I don't care about Alex Windsor, but basically if you want it, you can get it, and I can leave you in the same position that your husband is in, and that is in a hospital bed. Not so nice to say for Mercedes, but you can tell that AEW is trying to invest some type of momentum in Alex Windsor. You could say that it's due to the fact that she is dating, that she's, engaged to Will Ospreay. Who knows? I think that the lady has some talent. I think that since she's joined AEW, she's been able to showcase it on many different occasions. But hey, being engaged to one of the top guys can't hurt, right? Next, we get into a backstage video. Not backstage. We get into a video. Wasn't backstage. It was at his home of Mark Briscoe. Mark Briscoe reveals that he has had another son. He shows baby Briscoe. This guy has like 20 of them. I guess there's not a lot to do in Delaware other than make kids, right? And he talks about how they're in Philly. Philly is somewhere that the Briscoes have really made a mark in, especially during their ROH days. And he says, MJF, when I get the opportunity, I'm going to light you up. And he says, but right now I want to talk to another rival that I've had, and that is Kyle Fletcher, the TNT champion. He brings up that their record against each other is 2-2. So he says, why don't we do this in Philly? I want a shot at the TNT championship. Let's break this record up. Interesting. Kyle Fletcher is somebody who I've talked about as well. Could fill in the void for Will Ospreay. It's Swerve missing time. Kyle Fletcher, I know a lot of people, they want to compare him to Randy Orton, and you can kind of see it. But Fletcher's a guy who's very talented, and within the next 3 to 4 years, I could easily see him having a run with the AEW Championship. Guys, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't. 3,000 subs was hit earlier. That was insane, right? 3,000, guys. I appreciate every single one of you guys who chose to subscribe. When I first started the channel, I thought it was going to be hard to get 30 subs. So the fact that we're at 3,000 and a little bit over a year, I appreciate every single one of you who decided to hit that button, because with all these different content creators out there, you have thousands of different options to check out. And the fact that you guys have decided to, whether it's a short, these post shows, or individual videos, the fact that you guys have even chose to watch 30 seconds of anything that I've ever done, it's much appreciated. I think that a lot of times content creators don't show that to the audience, how much they appreciate them, and acknowledge the fact that, how big of a deal it is that you guys choose to watch our stuff. And I just want to let you guys know that I appreciate it a lot. And it means more to me than you guys would even know. Sincerely. And thank you for it. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't. It helps the channel out in more ways than you even know. Good job, kid. Thank you. You better acknowledge. I acknowledge every single person who takes even 30 seconds to watch what I do, because it means a lot. Next, we get into this all-star tag match. This is something I have a gripe about. If you guys watch the show, right, or AEW on a regular basis, it seems as if every single week we are having some type of all-star tag, and it's different iterations of tag matches, right? And when you have, all these different all-star matches with all the different lineups, it kind of makes you wonder, at what point do you run out of all-stars? Is everybody an all-star? or is there levels to these all-stars? Because and then we get announced after this that we're going to have another all-star tag match next week. It's just like, at what point are we just going to, what is the difference between a regular 8-man tag match and an all-star 8-man tag match? Is it this match has, guys that we like to put on TV on a regular basis, and these other guys are jobbers? It's just, it gets out of hand. But this all-star match, it's Jet Speed and Brodito, the new AEW Tag Team Champions, against the Callis family, Okada, Hechicero, Takeshita, Josh Alexander. If you guys don't know, this Friday at the ROH show, we're having, Hechicero versus Bandito for the ROH World Title. And this whole match, the Don Callis family is ballooned to the point to where they are, very reminiscent of late stage, NWO, where half the roster is a member of the, NWO. It feels like half of the roster is a member of the Don Callis family. But the part of the match that really intrigued me the most was we got to this point where Okada and Takeshita both tagged themselves in at the same time, and we saw some tension brewing between these two guys. This is a match that, ever since Okada signed on the dotted line to join AEW, is a match that I've desperately wanted to see. Takeshita is having a great year. If you guys don't know, he is the winner of the G1 Climax tournament this year, which means, he is in line for an IWGP title match. He's had a hell of a year. He is a guy who signed not only with AEW, but DDT, New Japan. The guy has been on a hell of a run outside of AEW. And him against Okada, I feel like that is a money match right there. I think the fact that English isn't their first language may be something to where they're a little bit hesitant to, put that match in a long, building feud, but at the same time, I feel like these two guys speak English well enough to where most people understand what they're saying. And to me, Their wrestling does the talking for them. I don't care. I don't sit around and when I fantasize about these two guys, having a match, I don't fantasize about the build. I just fantasize about the match itself. So for me, just book it and just let the wrestling do the talking. We were seeing Mike Bailey. He was going for a shooting star press, but he missed, and Josh Alexander was able to roll him up for the win. Good for Josh Alexander. It feels like Josh Alexander has been kind of a forgotten signing for AEW. He's kind of just blended into the background. And if you remember his work in TNA, he was doing a lot of good stuff. He was a guy who was involved in the main event scene. So it's good to see him kind of remind people that, hey, I'm one of the guys who are a little bit in the background of this Don Callis family, but I can go too. And they all need to be on TV. Does everybody need to be on TV? Well, we get Hangman Page, our AEW World Champion, coming off of his big win against MJF. There is no clear opponent for him at this moment. It looks as if now, after what we saw tonight, there's a possible direction that we can go to where we might see who his next opponent is. But Hangman Page comes out. Before he even really gets into what he wants to talk about, he thanks Will Ospreay for his help, during the build to this, showdown that he had with Jon Moxley at All In, and he thanked him for what he's done for AEW. He's sorry for what he has to face, since All In, and he says, when he comes back, he hopes that he's able to come back at 100%, and he's hoping that he's going to be able to defend his AEW championship against Will Ospreay. Then he goes back and starts talking about MJF. He says, MJF, you had your shot at Forbidden Door, and you failed. You threw every single thing that you were able to throw at me, and you weren't able to get the job done. And I hope that you are able to accept the fact that you failed, right? He is interrupted by Don Callis. Don Callis, he says, Hangman, me and you go way back. And he reminds Hangman that, the first time he won the AEW championship, he took that title from Don Callis. If you guys remember, Don Callis was representing Kenny Omega at the time, and Hangman was able to beat Kenny Omega. He calls Kenny Omega a loser again for the most part. And he says, I want that title back. And he says, I have half of the roster in the Don Callis family. And he says, it's not a question of if I'm going to get that title back. It's a question of when. And then we see the lower level guys of the Don Callis family come out. Guys like Lance Archer, Hechicero, Roppongi Vice, these guys. And you see Hangman Page try to get the jump on them, but the numbers game is to the Don Callis family's advantage. Then we see Jet Speed come out, try to make the save, and then we see Kenny Omega come and make the save as well. They're able to clear the ring out. We see a face-to-face confrontation from Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page, which could go either way, right? This could be a rekindling of their team that they had previously before. Like I said earlier, they are one half of what many people would consider to be the best tag team match in AEW history. Their match against the Young Bucks at Revolution, or this could be a rekindling of their rivalry that they had in the past. This time, it would be different dynamics since both of these guys are faces. I think that would kind of refreshen that match. And it's been a while since we've seen them go one-on-one against each other. And if we are going to have any hope, if AEW is going to have any hope of trying to win the headlines of that showdown that they're facing with WWE at WrestlePalooza, I think that the direction could possibly be, if you want to go for the biggest match and probably the best in-ring match, Omega versus Hangman Page could possibly be the direction that they want to go with, right? But they're going to be tagging in this all-star tag team match next week, again, with these freaking all-stars. And we'll see. We'll let this thing play out, right? Next, we get into a trios title match between Rico, my boy Ricochet, the light-skinned kingpin, a top 5 bald men in the game today. Where do you guys power rank bald men in professional wrestling? Like, if we had to have a top 5, who is the top 5 best bald men in professional wrestling history? Obviously, Steve Austin's like one, right? But it's kind of, does Hogan count because he had kind of a skullet? Does that count? Because technically he did have hair on his head. The Rock, in that conversation, the later years he was bald, so he has to put himself in that conversation. I don't know. Shoot, Goldberg, another one in the bald man conversation of great wrestlers. Shit. Who else? Who else is in that conversation of great bald men in professional wrestling history? Ricochet. A lot of great balds. A lot of great. But Kenny needs to say it. He makes the nice moment of these two. Yeah. Bobby Lashley's also in the bald man conversation of great wrestlers. But you see these guys, GOA and Ricochet, at Forbidden Door, they cost the Hurt Syndicate their AEW tag team titles. So you knew that they weren't going to just take that line down. These three guys were going after the trios title. It looked as if there was a point where Ricochet was going to pick up the win for his team, about to do maneuver off the top rope, but we see MVP from the back come, hit him with a cane. MVP screws Ricochet. Ricochet gets locked into the Coquina Clutch by Samoa Joe. He was out like a light. GOA, they are taking Ricochet on their shoulders, taking him back to the back area. But we hear the Hurt Syndicate's music, and they kind of just drop him like a sack of potatoes. And we see them brawling with the Hurt Syndicate. Two other great bald men in professional wrestling, Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. Kurt Angle, shit. Kurt Angle, I'm sorry, Ricochet, you gotta you're out. Kurt Angle replaces you in the hierarchy of great bald wrestlers. Sorry. Main event, Darby Allin versus Claudio Castagnoli in a Falls Count Anywhere match. And as soon as you knew that we got that stipulation of Falls Count Anywhere, you knew Darby was going to jump from something very high. And he jumped off of one of the metal beams. He isn't in the top 20. Richard was in the top 3 in that match. If you count the Hurt Syndicate, you hating, man. You hating on the light skinned Kingpin. Quit hating on that man. But we see Claudio about to make that entrance that he does, where he's panning from the back and walking to the arena. But we see Darby Allin, while he's walking by, jumping off of one of those steel boxes. I don't know what you call them. I don't even know how to really describe. If you see it, you know what I'm talking about, right? He jumps off of one of those big metal boxes. But Claudio, he's able to regain his momentum, and he puts Darby Allin in a shopping cart. He throws him out of the shopping cart. Then we see a flat screen TV. He lays the flat screen TV down, and we see Darby Allin get put through the flat screen TV, which freaking hurts. You see them brawling towards the entrance ramp. We see Claudio hit a swing on one of the guardrails, which hurt as well. They get back into the ring, and Darby Allin gets to a point where he's playing, batting practice with a chair, and he's swinging multiple times, hitting Claudio multiple times in the back. This was a brutal, display, because we saw all these different, weapons, around the ring. And then we got to a spot where Darby Allin is being attempted to where Claudio is trying to put him through a table. He bounces off the table. The table does not break. And so Claudio says, screw it, we're going to do it again. And then he slams him through the table again, and it busts. That time, this match was everything that you want, with the first night of them kicking off, their residency in the 23 Arena, home of ECW. They wanted to go balls out with this, and that's exactly what they did. I'm wondering, with them being in the 23 Arena for the next 2 weeks, are we going to see an appearance from an ECW legend? I know guys like Rob Van Dam and the Dudleys, they're signed to WWE Legends deals and whatnot, but maybe it'd be cool to see, the Sandman. I don't know if he's signed with the deal with WWE at all, but it'd be cool to see a Sandman entrance somehow, some way worked into it. Hearing, enter Sandman in that arena, never gets old. So that's something that I'd probably want to see. but who knows? But Darby Allin, he picks up the win with 2 coffin drops on Claudio Castagnoli. Big win for Darby. Big big opportunity for Claudio to be in the main event. He's usually, if he's in these main events, he's in these multi-matches. Good to see the guy have a singles main event. After that, Darby Allin is immediately jumped by Gabe Kidd and the Death Riders. They are circling him like a bunch of sharks during a feeding frenzy, but somehow, some way, Darby Allin is able to escape, and we end the show with the Death Riders frustrated because they weren't able to lay down a vicious case of the beats on Darby. But guys, that was your AEW post show. Next week, we're going to get, we're building closer and closer towards All Out. So I think the picture is going to become a lot more clearer as to the direction of that show. We already have one match confirmed, Cope and Christian versus FTR. We're going to see the type of card that they're going to build, heading into that showdown against WWE. It's going to be interesting to see the route that they go. Are they going to try to fight fire with fire and stack it up as much as they possibly can? Or are they going to stick to the plan that they originally had going into that show prior to WWE announcing that they are going to go head-to-head with them? I don't know how far in advance that Tony and his team likes to book things, so who knows? It's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. And guys, I'm going to put on a poll closer towards that night of what you guys would rather see me talk about. If you guys would rather have a All Out post show, or would you rather have a WrestlePalooza post show? I'm gonna leave it up to you guys because it's gonna be kind of hard if they do it at the same time. Fingers crossed. I'm hoping that one show decides that they want to be in the afternoon and the other show decides that they want to be at night. So this could be kind of a hybrid both. But hey, if I have to pick one or the other, I'm going to go with the show that people want to hear me talk about. But guys, I'll catch you guys next week for the Raw post show. There was no Raw post show this week solely because of the fact that it started early in the afternoon and I was working my day job, so couldn't do it. But we'll be back next Monday. Of course, next week, the AEW post show. Yeah, kind of figured that's the one that you'd want, right? Either way, both events are going to be covered. Whether it's one getting a whole post show and the other one getting individual videos talking about it in shorts, they're both going to get covered. It just depends on how. But guys, it's been a long night. Again, thank you for helping the channel reach to 3,000 subs. It means more to me than you guys could even know. But I am Kevin Zwicker. I'm out.